Come to an end as time is over. I'll just briefly sum up what we have, what has transpired today. Uh, I think what Rebecca put across to us was that the UN has a very beautiful policy of leaving no one behind, and that obviously the one who's behind is the woman, so it is very good for her. Of course, the UN has a much wider perspective of women's rights than just merely land. It's a much broader perspective, and they are concentrating more on rural women in India, since they constitute 325 million uh, people. So very justifiable, and there's no denying that they have a global experience that giving land and title to women has a positive effect on various aspects of their lives, like security and economic, social. It enhances, reduces domestic violence. I think this has come out in various studies, and their increased role in decision making and participating in community programs, and even land tenures to women enhance food and nutrition and encourage higher yields in agriculture. And lack of ownership decreases access to credit and to markets. There are many reasons why women are not getting their land rights, largely due to laws of inheritance, customs, lack of reforms, the policy and legal frameworks as they exist. And the point that Rebecca made was that women form a large part of the labor force, but their labor goes largely unpaid. So I think that needs to be recognized. Then Savvy reiterated a lot of the points on the global perspective that Rebecca had made. But coming to UP, the work that they are doing in UP shows that even where women are earning, they do not have control over their earnings, and they don't have any power of decision making. And but they have made a dent through the RO Mahila Kisan Manch, which they have established, I think, in every Gaon Sabha, in every ground sabha. So, and what came across very beautifully was that they have been able to engage men also and change mindsets. And about 15,000 men have also joined. And the work they're doing has been noted by the government, and hopefully government will wake up and reform itself. From between 2009 and 11, there's been talk in UP of giving joint land titles. And even men, 6,800 men have agreed to this, which I think is a very major step forward. Praniti made it very clear that it's a micro study, and but I think a lot of the global issues that they have been able to prove, which the men are trying to unprove or questioning. But I think Pranati was able to stand that besides land, there has to be a supportive system. It cannot be just, which came across very clearly in Rajeshji's talk as well, that is not enough to give just land. The difference comes if there is a supportive system also around that land. And as I had said, that whatever is the handicap in agriculture in India, which even men are facing, the men farmers, the women farmers will also face that. But the benefits from giving land and land titles is very obvious. I mean, it is, and of course, she specified that it is also linked to the size of the plot, the accessibility, and the knowledge that women have about agriculture, and also knowledge about their rights. I think next was Shipra. Rajesh ji brought out very clearly that there has to be great attention to detailing once the land is given to the women. And there has to be effort at modernizing the agriculture, increasing access to credit, marketing, etc. The whole uh, parallel system that makes agriculture profitable has to be put into place. And Shipra once again went back to UP. I think what came across very strongly in her presentation was that you can have a lot of laws in place, you can have, uh, uh, but the attitude and mindset are far more important. In fact, I have always seen that uh, you can have a law, you can have punitive provisions in the law as was suggested, but what makes a law really function is uh, support in the public. If there is support for a law in the public, the law functions automatically. And when there's no support for that law in the public, you can have any amount of punitive measures and all that, because you can't penalize the entire population. You know, if the entire population thinks in a particular way, the government usually has to bow to that way. I don't think government is reformist. Government basically goes along with what the public is thinking. Laws actually reflect what the public thinks. I don't think government makes a good reformist. Actually, land is a state subject. So that makes, there is a lot of variety in the country about land, what is happening, particularly what is happening about giving land to women and women's rights in land. It is very difficult to paint one picture about what is happening in the country, because every state is at a different level of and then we also have, women's land rights have a lot to do with customs and religion. Like it was pointed out by my colleague who's from Andhra Kada, that you can't go blindly in this and have one law for the entire state. There are pockets of customary laws and religions which the government at least has to respect. It cannot tread on everybody's toes to have uniform laws. Uh, a lot of people still follow the Shastric prescriptions of Mitakshara and Daya Bhag legal doctrines. Then you also have the 1937 Shariat Act, so Muslim personal law and all. And it is difficult for the government to just override these as if they don't exist. They have other fallouts. So, and when it comes to mindset, what I have experienced is even education and gender do not affect. Mindset can be very different. For example, there's a land management bank in UP, and they were having a training program for their women employees, and they asked me to speak on gender equality. So I just asked the women, I said, how many of you would like to name property in the names of your daughters? And in that full hall, I think barely 2 hands came up. It was all women. So that's what I'm saying. It has nothing to do with gender. So I asked the other women, I said, why don't they were all complaining that they got property neither from their parents nor from their in-laws, and they need to be empowered. I said, you have suffered this. Why don't you want to empower your daughters? So one woman told me, she said in Hindi, that बाद में तो हमें बेटे के पास ही रहना है, तो हम प्रॉपर्टी बेटी को क्यों दे? So basically, this question comes with every generation. So which is the generation which is going to empower the daughter? somebody has to take the first step and make the first sacrifice and empower the daughter. This patrilocal system that we have, where the woman has to go and live in the boy's house, I think this makes a lot of difference to parents parting with property. You know, no. Similarly, education. I know a case almost in my family where the man was educated, the father was educated in England. He sent his daughter to study in England. But when it came to inheritance, he gave his entire property to his son. So education has no bearing on this. We talk about fragmentation of holdings in rural areas, but the urban people are equally concerned about fragmenting their properties in urban areas. They don't want to split their properties in urban areas and keep it consolidated with the son. You know, so moreover, what experience has always taught us, there is no movement in India as such for women's land rights. And I think unless nobody gives you a right on a platter, you have to always fight for your right. And it is always when women have fought for their rights that they have got it. You see, suffrage in the West came much after it came to the East. But women had to fight for their right to vote, and then they got it. Here, women are blissfully ignorant, or they forego their rights in favor of their male relatives, but they want the right. It is not going to come, who's going to come and give it to you on a platter? I think the women have to ultimately come forward and fight for their rights and exercise. You know what surprised me in today's session was that there was total silence on the issue of dowry. I think that is equally related to the land rights of women, and dowry has been used to substitute land rights of women as if that is enough. But what comes across is the kind of wealth that land can generate if properly utilized. No amount of dowry can do. I think also one other related issue with this empowering women with land is that there again the fear is that when the land or the property is given to the woman, again women have no control over their land and property and earnings in the husband's home. So the fear of the parents always is the land will not go to the daughter, it will be taken over by the in-laws. I think there's a mental resistance to giving this land, that our hard earned property, why should it go to another family? It is not going to the daughter. So the more women are in control of their resources, the more they are control of decision making, and if they can decide what they want to do with the properties they inherit, I think there'll be more willingness on the part of the parents to give the property to the woman. There is also fear of change. You know, we fear change a lot. I think there is also a fear that if women are empowered, we don't know what kind of changes will come into our society. I think that is also part of the reason people fear. Don't educate the woman, don't give her empowerment, don't give her land, don't give her property, because the social norms in the family are likely to change. You know, urban people are less fearful of change. We have already changed. I mean, urban women have already changed, urban men are already changing. As you go more towards rural areas, there is more fear of change. And there is a total fear of changing tribals. You know, I think we are all trying to preserve tribals as they are, rather than that evolution has to take place there also. Nobody can remain like a museum, you know, forever. There's fear of change on religious grounds. So I think there is a general fear of change, and I think in the pockets where NGOs, civil society, and all the people who gave presentations are bringing the change, and people are finding that the change is not so bad, and they are accepting the change, I think the change is coming. So I
Miss
think
Sinha,
this.
I'm sorry. I think I'm here at the podium.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'll have to cut